Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and I test a ton of gear. Next to me is the Jones Stratos and the Jones Frontier. I rode this with Union Atlas and Nidecker Rift laces. I got this in a decent amount of pow, not amazing powder, but really good for spring. Then I got this on some groomers and some uneven snow just to see how this new top sheet does. And the good news is it's less chattery than before. The bad news is it's not as damp as I would like.
The 159 fit me really well, and if this had that non-chattery construction like most boards in Jones's line, I wouldn't want to size up or size down. This would be a perfect fit for me. The 162 isn't my ideal size for how I want to ride it, but I could for sure handle it. The only problem is it's only going to slightly minimize the chattery issue. It's not going to fix it.
You have a tapered directional shape. It's not super directional. You can see the Frontier next to it is pretty directional, but it's not tapered. This takes it up from the Frontier and makes it tapered directional. It really sits on that free ride side of things, but it's a great do anything shape that doesn't feel super tapered. It has a good bit of camber, but then it has a little early rise with some spoon in the nose and maybe a touch of early rise in the tail with a little bit of spoon there. I didn't really notice it that much or at all in harder snow. It just tracks really well while still being very forgiving, like a lot of hybrid camber boards like the Frontier you see next to it.
Let's talk flex here. You can see it's got a very medium stiff flex. I only feel the give down here at the tail. I feel a little give at the nose, but when you go down between the feet, there's very little give. It's almost stiff between the feet, and it just has this nice snap to it, and it's really poppy and lively.
It makes the Jones Stratos really easy to ollie. Coming off the Frontier, getting on the Stratos, my ollie power just went way up. It might be, in my opinion, one of the poppiest free ride boards in Jones's line. Just this regular Stratos, I like it more than the Ultra Flagship, the Ultra Craft, Ultra Mind Expander. This just has pop for days. When it comes to buttering and playing around, it's doable. The lifted sides, AKA the spoon tech that is primarily throughout the nose, really makes it hard to keep a nose butter going because it wants to go to one or the other side of the spoon. But it's doable, and with a little time and practice, when you get this dynamic poppy personality on snow, it just doesn't have the chatter absorption. It's just not as fun midday as the Frontier, as the Flagship, as the Mind Expanders. Those just all do better. If they had more dampening properties wherever they could without compromising the pop too much, this would be one of the most amazing boards out there, and a board I just would constantly want to ride. Right now as it stands, I still see it more as a good conditions board. When it comes to the base glide, I love that this is still a black base, or at least the one I have, and it has really good glide. It really just moves easy over snow, especially midwinter snow. These things are just the best, especially at this price point. Now, if you want to point it in good conditions, this stiff flex will handle that no problem. Midday snow though, it's not gonna be ideal. It's just not a great straight liner, even though the side cut's pretty balanced. Edge hold is great in good conditions. You get hard, icy snow. I didn't feel like the lifted sides at the end of the effective edge really made it feel edgeless or washy. It felt like the majority of the lift was past the camber profile. I did need maybe a touch more weight between the feet than I would, let's say, a normal hybrid camber board without spoon tech would have. If you're looking at hard micro bumpy snow or hard slightly uneven snow, the edge can buck out of the line, but it's better than it used to be. The Stratos is super fun to turn in good conditions. This just springs out of a turn. I would say I liked it even more than the Mind Expander and the Ultra Mind Expander, which are way more directional. I like it more than the Flagship and the Ultra Flagship. It just has a little more pop out of the turn. And this side cut radius is pretty turny for Jones. I think that's why I like the Stratos so much. And I also like the Frontier so much. They have basically the same side cut radius. That doesn't mean they have exactly the same side cut. There's a lot of secret sauce that goes into the construction of these boards, and specs can lie. But both of these boards definitely live on the more turny side, but still far from being incompetent when it comes to going straight or making long, narrow S-turns. I got this in some powder this time around, but I've gotten this in a lot of powder with the same shape, same setback. This thing floats really well, especially coming off the Frontier, where one day I rode the Ultra Mountain Twin. Then I got on the Frontier and I went, whoa, that's so much easier to float. Then I got on the Stratos and I'm like, okay, next level again. This is way more setback, surfy, and directional in powder. It really transforms, especially if you use these setback inserts. You get really far back on board. Unfortunately, the stance width is just massively wide, so I can't use the setback inserts on the back with my 21.5-inch stance width. But if you have a wider stance than myself, at a 22.75-inch stance width with the setback inserts on both bindings, you can get 5.25 inches back from center of board. It's almost there with the hovercraft at negative 6.75 inches back from center of board. It's actually a little more than the Mind Expander and Ultra Mind Expander in terms of setback on board. They have much more taper, much bigger nose, much narrower tail, so they float better, but this is up in that world of easy directional float, and it rivals a lot of much more directional freeride boards when you use the setback inserts. The Stratos rides switch pretty well too. Nothing like the Frontier or the Mountain Twins, but it does very well for a tapered directional board. So overall, the 2024 Stratos with this newer top sheet is better than the old Stratos in terms of dampness, but it's still not where it needs to be. If this had the same dampness as the Frontier, this would be one of the most recommendable boards out there. This does so many things right. Still a very poppy, fun, dynamic, versatile ride